We're dealing with two amendments from the Legislative Council, two suggested amendments. I'll give the Minister the call now.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to thank the Legislative Council for their consideration of the Children, Young People Oversight and Advocacy Bodies Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People Amendment Bill and indicate that the government will be supporting these amendments. I therefore move that the House of Assembly accept the amendments recommended by the Legislative Council. Is that sufficient in terms of the pro forma? And yeah. I'd like to reflect briefly on the situation, if I may. The bill that we're, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 minutes going to see the conclusion of is a culmination of a significant body of work over several years, and it's a particularly good moment for Ms April Laurie, the Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People in South Australia, who I spoke to a few moments ago after the passage of the bill with these very minor amendments in the Legislative Council, to commend her for the work that she has done over nearly the last 3 years in the role without the legislative powers that are hereby to be conferred on people once appointed to this important role in the future. And she was able to indicate to me her absolute pleasure with that progress. Also, I would like to share with the House that it is her mother's birthday today, and I think that we would all wish her the joy of the day for both her birthday and the important improvements and enhancements to the role that her daughter currently holds. Now, this bill has been the work of many people and the Department for Education in collaboration with many people across government, many people and stakeholders in Aboriginal community leaders and elders who have had input over the years, and indeed a number of the other oversight and advocacy bodies, and indeed also Mr Richard Dennis, Parliamentary Counsel of years gone by, who undertook a review of the Oversight and Advocacy's Body Act in accordance with that legislation, and one of his key recommendations was the value of enshrining the role of Aboriginal Children's Commissioner in legislation rather than continuing the status quo, which was an appointment under the Constitution Act. And we believe that these powers will enhance the role, it will enhance the opportunity for Ms Laurie or indeed future commissioners to be able to assist government services to be improved for Aboriginal children and young people, and indeed giving a voice to many Aboriginal children and young people in a very formal way with a significant megaphone that the role of the Commissioner will provide. So I thank the Legislative Council for their consideration of amendments. There were a number of amendments proposed by the member for Raynell in the House of Assembly that the Labor Party did not proceed with in the Legislative Council, and I believe that I just want to reflect briefly on that because I think it was the right decision by the Labor Party to do that. The issues raised, and we discussed them in this chamber at the time, were not unreasonable issues, and many of them we believed were issues that the intent was to be supported, but we felt were better dealt with by policy or regulation rather than by legislation. And the Shadow Minister will no doubt reflect on whether I'm accurate in my estimation. I think the Labor Party seems to have accepted that both from the perspective that we want those things to happen and we think they can happen without legislation, and indeed to ensure the timeliness of the legislation could be dealt with with regulations able to now be done by the end of this year. I'd like to thank the Labor Party for that pragmatic approach that will, I think, lead to the best outcome for the role. Other amendments were put forward, as I understand it, in the Legislative Council by the SA Best Party, and once more, I think that the intent of those amendments was sound, and certainly I believe that they offered them in absolute sound spirit and good spirit and fairness, and they would like to see those outcomes achieved. And I believe again that the things that they were seeking to deliver are best able to be done as a matter of policy and a matter of the Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People, Commissioner for Children and Young People, Guardian, any other relevant oversight and advocacy bodies working together with goodwill, and I think that that will happen. The complexity that they would have introduced into the legislation was the reason for our opposition there, but I thank them for that contribution. And Mr Daly's amendments, which we believe are capable of being dealt with suitably in the legislation, we're happy to accept. I thank all members for their support for this bill, and I think it's a very important piece of legislation that every Member of Parliament has now supported.
Member for Raynell.
I have about 30 seconds.
We'll give you 2 minutes.
No worries. Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I rise to just make a few remarks about the passage of the Children and Young People Advocacy and Oversight Bodies Commissioner for Aboriginal Children and Young People Amendment Bill. In doing so, I wanted to wholeheartedly again commend and thank Commissioner April Laurie for her incredibly strong, passionate advocacy for Aboriginal children and young people. And I wanted to commend her on undertaking work that I think we would all agree in this House is crucially important to ensure that the voices of Aboriginal children, young people, their families and communities are heard. Work that I think we would all agree is crucially important to ensuring action on what is important to Aboriginal children, young people, their families and communities, and action that will continue to make a difference in their lives. I certainly look forward to continuing to find ways to support the Commissioner in my role as Shadow Minister, and I look forward to seeing what she progresses and how she continues to do that really important work of providing a voice and advocacy for Aboriginal children and young people. I also join the Minister for Education in wishing her mum a very happy birthday, and I do hope that she can enjoy a lovely celebration with her this evening. Just finally, in these last few seconds, thank you to the Minister for Education for his work on this bill, and department officials also. Thank you to all who spoke on the bill, and thank you to the Honourable Emily Burke, who had carriage of the bill in the upper house for the opposition, and for those who made very thoughtful amendments to the bill. And with that, I will sit down.
So supporting the amendments?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the question, thank you all involved. The question before the chair is that amendments numbers 1 and 2 from the Legislative Council be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. That's carried.